All right, hey guys, my first guest is now officially a novelist, having written his first book, A Boy, His Bibi, and a Bari, the story of a 10-year-old boy sent by his parents from the UK to Bangladesh to live with his grandmother. This is an excellent tale. We're going to find out more about that and more about the author. Please welcome on the call, across from the pond, Mr. Shah Alam himself. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Clark. And how are you?
You know what? I'm excited. I'm fantastic. I believe, and I got to get my staff to check this, but I believe you're our first guest from the UK. We've had some European countries call in. We've had guests from Paris, from Germany, I believe, and even Switzerland. But I think you're our first UK guest. So I want to say thank you, and hey, shout out to you for coming on the line.
Thank you very much. I'm much honored to be on your guest. I'm the first UK guest, and it tops it because it's my birthday today as well. I can't be any better than that.
Well, speaking of birthdays, I'm sure I've kind of been nosy on Facebook. I see the wonderful celebrations not only on your book signing recently, but obviously you guys, along with I know he's sitting next to you, Mr. Ellis Gainey. You guys must be having a great time, and today is going to be interesting in and of itself.
Absolutely. I mean, Ellis came over specifically for my book launch. He's a very dear friend of mine, and the support he has shown and the backup he's provided when in need. I tell you what, his brain and my brain on Thursday night put together some wonderful stuff for the show on Friday that we held with the book being launched to the people who came to attend the event. I couldn't have done it without him, and he's come from across the pond to help me.
Well, you know what? He's a good guy and a dear friend for many, many years, and you got a number one guy in your corner. Speaking about the book and your book launch, this, if my staff is correct, this is your first novel. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a more of a memoir, and it's my first book, first stab at it. And yes, I set myself a goal of publishing within 11 months, and here I am. But I wrote the book 10 years ago, actually, and I sent it off to many literary agents in London, many publishing houses, the likes of the Penguin and a whole host of others. And as usual, the usual reply I got was thank you and all the best with your endeavours. And work got in the way, and life got in the way, and it sat on my hard disk, going from laptop to laptop, as I upgraded every year or every couple of years. And then at the end of last year, I said to myself, no, this is not good enough. I'm not going to let myself have any regrets, and I want to get this published within a year. And I'm so proud to have been able to do that. And it's been with the support of friends and family across the pond and across the globe who have made this happen today. And we've had a great 4 days since Thursday with Ellis and a whole host of other friends, and it's just been unbelievable, Clark.
Well, we're going to get into the book itself in just a minute. I want to delve into the process because it's very interesting. You had the book basically written 10 years ago, and I'm always curious with this, especially with you yourself being a new writer. Were you tempted to tinker with the story, as it transfers from laptop to laptop, or did the story stay for the most part completed after you finish? That's 10 years. You rethink things and you say, I want to do that differently, or write or add or subtract. Was the finished product pretty much the same as what you finished 10 years ago, or did it morph along the way? Absolutely.
I wrote the book in 2002, and I put, finger to keyboard, and within 12 months I'd written the whole book, and it sat there, and as it transferred between laptops, it did not change an iota. I just literally moved the copy from one laptop to another. It was only this November 2011 that when I said, okay, I'm going to get this published, that I started going through it, checking the grammar, expanding stories where they needed expanding, and making clarifications where it needed to be clarified. But essentially the story stayed the same throughout the whole period. And what you may be wanting to know why I waited 10 years. It's literally because the advent of e-publishing, e-books, and also self-publishing has become so affordable that I thought, well, no way am I going to let this opportunity to go by, and why not now? Why wait till tomorrow?
I would agree. One of the things I love about when you finally get a book published, to me, you're becoming immortal, because once you get your ISBN number, that's for life. That's for eternity. That's for as long as probably we have civilization. That number is attached to you and attached to the book when we're long gone, and people are still reading. In this case, your memoirs. Speaking of your memoirs, it's very unique that, and I find this happening more and more lately, that people's first stab into the literature world is based on their memoirs. It's very difficult because it calls for a certain level of transparency to write about. Did you find, well, let me ask you this, do you have a writing background that would have led to this this discovery, or was this just something you said, I got to write?
I think, just to go back to what you said earlier about immortality, etc., I think throughout history, we become civilizations through the stories that are told by our forefathers and our forefathers before them. It's stories that are passed down from generation to generation to generation that are read by people into the future that determines our civilization. We take a look at Plato, we take a look at Homer's. Those are all compositions of stories that they wrote, and they became the Iliad and the Odyssey, and now they become foundations of great civilizations and how we think about democracy, etc. And I thought my story is one in a million. However, it's a story, and I thought I want to write this because it's unique in the sense that it applies to the immigrant diaspora that are over the world, and in particular to South Asian immigrant diaspora. And if to answer the question about writing background, I really love reading. I picked one of my favorite authors is J.R.R. Tolkien, of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that's coming out soon in movie. I read The Hobbit when I was 14, and immediately after that I read Lord of the Rings, all three books. And it's just been in me. I love writing and I love reading. And this was one story that I thought would be appropriate in this day and age where the world is getting smaller and people are so fluid in terms of moving between countries, and the whole concept of the book and the preface of the book is about people and people moving around and who are we, what's our identity, what's our culture, where's home. And I thought it's very poignant and relevant to everyone and anyone around the world.
You touched on something. I share a commonality in the fact that J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit was actually the first book I read that I consider a novel, like something of substance, more than maybe 100 pages. So the first book I read, and I too fell in love with reading after reading his fantastical version of a mythical land and concepts. And of course, there are subsequent books after that kind of leave you reading forever his works. A Boy is Bibi and the Bari. Tell us, how did the title come about? And for those who don't know, explain what Bibi and Bari are.
A Boy, his Bibi and the Bari are the three main subjects of the book. A Boy being myself, a 10-year-old lad in Bangladesh in 1980. His Bibi was my loving name, and my siblings' loving name for our grandmother. And a Bari is a homestead stroke farmstead, a Bengali word that refers to a homestead or a farmstead. So literally what it's talking about is myself, my grandmother, and our home in Bangladesh. And that's the title of the book, and they're the three main subjects of the book itself. And all of the adventures and all of the, Huck Finn stroke Mowgli out of Jungle Book style of living that I did for about 11 months while I was out there living with my grandmother. And that pretty much, in a nutshell, is what the title is and what the contents of the book are about.
I wonder if people really get the magnitude of your journey. I just so happen to have a 10-year-old son, and I cannot imagine his response, let alone his mother's or my response, if he were to be sent away to another country to kind of to come up, to learn, to cultivate itself. It's just how was that experience? You said you were the eldest son, so this must have been, was this something that you knew was coming about? Was this a surprise? And do you remember being 10, what your reaction was when you knew that you had to leave essentially your home?
Absolutely. It was a random decision by my father based on a visit from one of his cousins who was visiting Bangladesh at the end of 1979. And my father said, well, why don't you take my son with you? My uncle went along, yeah, absolutely, why not? But Mom was adamantly against it. She did not want me to go. And in the book I describe how she fought with my father in terms of words and arguments. How can he send a 10-year-old boy to live on his own? And Bangladesh had just come out of a civil war in 1971, so it was less than a decade after a civil war. So there was no health care, there was no infrastructure, there was no telephones, no electricity, no road system. It was getting itself back on its feet through restructuring. And then my dad's view was that I had to grow up fast. I had to learn to be a man of the family. I had to learn, not forget the ways of Bengali culture. He was a first-generation immigrant from from Bangladesh to the UK, and he felt it was his duty to ensure that his eldest son did not lose his identity, his cultural identity, his language, and so forth and so on, his food and the clothing, the atmosphere, the environment that goes with living in Bangladesh. And I think he did so not so much out of wanting to send me away akin to a boarding school, but it was out of his fear of his children, and especially his eldest son, becoming too westernized and losing the touch with their home, with the home country. And I think it's a story that can, if we ask people all around the world who've moved from, say, India to Canada, from Mexico to North America, USA, from UK to Australia, the stories are very similar. People are still moving around the world, and I'm sure parents, they do not want their children to lose the identity that they have from where they've come from. However, yes, it was a decision, but my dad took quite randomly, but my mum was against it. And my reaction at the time, I was surprised, but I wasn't against it. I went along with it in the sense that, wow, I'm going back, I'll be on my own with my grandmother. How cool is that? So a bit of a typical 10-year-old kid who just wants to go out and have fun. That was my reaction. I did not fight it. I did not rebel against it. Not forgetting that in that year I had just moved down from a Midland city of Worcester down to London. Therefore, I hadn't settled down into any school yet in London. Had made no new friends. So still a bit trying to get my feet under the table, so as to say, at my new school. So the disruption coming by being sent to Bangladesh would not have been a major shift in what had already happened by moving from the north of England down to London.